How we doing, guys? And welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Here with my good friend, Mr. Mike Zappi. We are keeping an eye on the Aaron Judge chase. Some of the topics we're going to be speaking on, obviously, that. And we are also going to speak on the Mets mess going on in Atlanta. They are deadlocked for first, but not for long. Atlanta's got a comfortable lead in that game right now. And we also want to hit on the very controversial topic coming out of Miami involving Tua Tagovailoa and, in a lot of people's estimations and opinions, an ineptitude of the organization to properly diagnose a concussion or just from flat-out safety that should have been applied Sunday, short week. Very scary scene yesterday. And we're going to speak on that. We're actually going to start there. Zappy, what are your thoughts on all this, man?
I mean, honestly, I was going back to Sunday. I was very surprised he was let back into the game to begin with. You know, he went down, he took that hit. As he gets up, we saw him stumble, and it took his tackle to bring him back up to his feet, and then he stumbled again. And that right there is a sign of some sort of neurological issue, whether it's concussion or whatever the case may be. The fact that the team allowed him to go back on the field after that, I mean, I feel like there might have been some sort of malpractice going on, or something was ignored. But I was listening to NFL radio today and listening to Dr. David Chow, and he gives excellent insight all the time. And he was talking about if he was a doctor out there, he would have demanded take his helmet away. He's not going back in today, and he's not playing this Thursday. So there was something that was mishandled with this whole situation. And then to watch him yesterday lay on the ground, which also upset me a lot about Amazon Prime, that they were constantly showing that replay and showing him laying there with his hands all crimpled up.
That wouldn't have happened on Fox.
The one thing no, it wouldn't have. And, you know, and there's a lot of things that were mishandled. You know, you look at the Amazon crew last night, it took them forever to talk about Sunday's game and that hit. And then we watched Tua laying on the ground. The one thing that comes to mind immediately, the one injury is Donald Parham last year on Thursday Night Football when the Chargers were playing the Chiefs, and he took a similar type of hit, the tight end for the Chargers. He took a similar type of hit, and he has not played since then. And this is a very similar situation where hopefully we see Tua. Hopefully his parents are on him saying, no, we got to make sure, because this is a life-threatening situation.
They were in Cincinnati, and that's rough. That's rough.
It is.
There to witness that. I just see it as a very negligent situation with the organization, because we've been watching football long enough to know that guys don't come back that quickly. And the reason I think there was definitely something wrong that already had started in Miami on Sunday was it wasn't the worst kind of toss or the worst kind of hit that had Tua in that very scary position. I mean, my initial reaction was, Jesus, I really hope this kid didn't have a stroke.
Yeah.
It was scary. It was really scary. And, we spoke about it with Justin Herbert with the rib injury. We're speaking about it again with Tua. Now we're looking into probably skipping a few steps. Truth of the matter is the NFL is not going to admit their wrongs. That's something that we already know. And we have to take into consideration that this is a league that is not that far removed from handing out Vicodin and all kinds of other pain pills, but then running away from the problems when it affected their players. So, my mother said it best. Sergio said it best. They're treating these guys like cattle, and it's kind of pathetic.
Exactly. That they're a number. I mean, that's why they have the draft year in and year out. You can't play anymore. We replace you with somebody else. They're going to use you. They're going to abuse you until you can't do it anymore. Some guys are lucky enough to get that big contract. I saw people complaining about, for example, Cedric Wilson, how he went and chased the bag instead of returning to Dallas. So I'm like, he did the right thing. He went and got paid. He's not playing much, but he got his future secured, his children's future, and so on and so forth. And then you see situations like this where, can you play? You're good? All right, go back out there.
And that's the thing that legitimately tells me that in that sport, more so than probably any other, that the players should not be all that loyal to the organization, because time and time again you see these things. In the NBA, at least they pay you like that. You can be a bench rider and make a fabulous amount of money. Major League Baseball does take a while because there's different layers. But I think you could also make the argument that the safety element of it is not in the same realm. But it's ridiculous, man. What I've seen lately, and like I said, you have a show like Dark Side of Football. We're just even seeing things over the course of time with different players. I remember when Brett Favre went to rehab. Lawrence Taylor, one of the greatest players to ever play. Your guy, Michael Irvin, guys that had addiction issues. A lot of people that have addiction issues are in pain. And there is a first cousin element to how they got there. And, the common denominator is the sport. You look at the Steelers of the 70s, guys dropping dead before their time, with the steroids and things of that nature. Anybody that thinks similar to like Vince McMahon's promotion in wrestling during that era where they were eating those things like candy, anybody that thinks that the powers that be in the NFL weren't aware of this, come on, man.
Yeah, and it's really sickening too, because when we talk about players from the 70s or even the 80s compared to today, 2022, where medicine has advanced so much.
For sure.
There's things, back then, it was a lot harder to track these things. Even as far back as talk about Junior Seau, a guy that took his life because of a lot of CTE issues, And it's just like, there's no excuses for this whatsoever. I don't care if, he's your $150 million guaranteed contract, whatever the case is. Their health is the most important thing. These guys still have a family to go home to every day. They still have children to care for, parents, whatever the kid. They're human beings, and they're not being treated that way. And it's disgusting. It really is.
If you're our age and these dudes could barely walk, have chronic everything, possibly CTE issues, having issues at home because they can't process life after the league, is any of it really worth it?
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point. That's why we've seen more players recently retire at such young ages. One of the biggest ones, Andrew Luck, he made the right choice.
Absolutely.
The guy, he walked away. Yeah, and look at how the fans treated him for thinking about himself, it was kind of like, come on, really? Like, he came off of a pretty bad injury, and he said, no, I want to live a long, prosperous life. There's other things I can do in life, and I'll be just fine. And he's doing it. You look at many linebackers, especially, that have called it quits. And it's just something needs to be done. We need to be holding these owners more accountable, and that's the bottom line. But when you're worth billions of dollars, it's very easy to get away with a lot of these things and just turn your head like you didn't know.
While we're on the topic of owners versus players and the way that those things work, and, we've done episodes in the past, Dorney and myself, billionaires versus millionaires, a point that I want to make around the board, and I think most football fans and definitely most football players likely agree with my take on this. We saw it as recently with Sterling Shepard.
Oh, yeah.
Sterling Shepard, non-contact injury. I feel that with the exception of domes, they need to go natural grass around the board. Enough of this synthetic crap. When you think about the conglomerate that the NFL is and the kind of money that they're making, There is absolutely no excuse why they should not be able to put in the work to have the beautiful setups and safer setups like baseball fields do. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable that you have all these non-contact injuries. You go back to the 80s and 70s, yeah, you had concussions. And yeah, you had some serious head trauma and injuries. But you didn't see these non-contact injuries in those eras.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Common denominator is the switch from natural grass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've seen. I brought up the point how we're starting to see more and more stadiums go back to natural grass where they have it where it could be removable grass. It's the whole field can come out and then they can do whatever else. If you go watch the conversion of Tottenham Stadium, they also have removable natural grass. So it's something that every stadium needs to go to. You're making billions of dollars. Invest the money in your players' health and safety by improving the field, because quite frankly, if the player's health is not that important to you, then it's going to come back and bite you in the ass by going towards your pocketbook when the fans who are paying a lot of money to go see certain players, and if that player is not there because you're not protecting him, you're going to see it. Jerry Jones saw it with Dallas. As soon as Dak went down, the ticket prices plummeted. I mean, they plummeted a lot. And now, of course, Jerry being the great salesman he is, he sold Dallas on other things. And, they're still selling tickets, but not at the price that they were selling at before the Dak injury, which brings up another thing about rushing these players back too soon. Dak's one of them. While it's only a thumb injury, if he comes back a week or 2 weeks too soon, we're talking about a guy that could possibly miss the rest of the season. Romo came back too soon. He won against the Dolphins, and the following week against the Panthers, what happens? He's out for the rest of the year. We see this time in and time again, and it's getting annoying, and especially when it comes to concussion. And if we're talking about today, it's Friday. So they're going to use Tua has extended time, yada, yada, yada. If you ask me, I would think the soonest logical time frame for him would be at least 2 months. But
we both know it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
That's really not going to happen.
I mean, it's one of those. I like Tua. I like the progression he has made throughout his career, these first couple of seasons. But this is a moment of he needs to ask himself the question, is it really worth it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely agree. And so, it's just obviously I'm still waiting for this investigation to be completed. I hope the investigation that they don't hide anything from it. And
That's
I'm sure
the
NFL
truth, though. I feel that the powerful conglomerate already, because quite frankly, I do believe that the league offices could have come down on Miami while it went down if they truly wanted to. And I do believe that it was one of those things where they're like, let's just see how this gets perceived before we worry about it. Kind of like the wait and see approach, similar to how I saw things go down with baseball with the steroids. They didn't care until Congress did. So essentially, they didn't care until they had to.
Which brings me to this point that I forgot to mention. If we have a situation similar to Tua, because if it's an ACL or an Achilles, we tend to know within 48 hours from the injury.
Yeah, for sure.
But if it's an investigation like Tua with a concussion that can possibly affect the rest of his career,
then you're playing on a short week.
Career. I'm playing on a short week, and the NFL Players Association says we are going to investigate the matter. There has to be something that automatically that player cannot play if they are investigating a situation like that, because obviously
you would think so,
his health is at risk.
Because they gave like a very quick answer. Oh, that everything was followed. I've never seen anyone come back that quick with a potential head, neck, or back injury. And I've been watching football a long time.
Yeah, and I mean, I myself, I suffered a concussion in high school, and I did not come back right away. It took me about a week to come back, and it's just, it's just the way it is. And I wasn't playing against these guys that run 4.240s that can bench 455 to 500 pounds and squat the life of them. And not to say anything about the sack last night that it was bad. It was a perfectly, I mean, he did everything right.
Dirty about it. It was just
nothing. It was an
they put him
unfortunate accident.
In a really bad position. And then just to speak on the X's and O's for a second, I believe that if the Dolphins start Teddy Bridgewater, they win the game last night.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Tua just did not have himself a good game in the time he was playing before that.
Yeah,
injury.
he didn't look right.
Well, he didn't look right at all. Exactly. And Teddy Bridgewater's not a bad quarterback. You know, he's won in this league before for multiple teams. Let's face it. He hasn't been himself since he was a Viking. And after suffering that injury again, after he suffered it in college while he was at Louisville. But it's just – maybe it wasn't Mike McDaniel that mishandled the situation, but I tend to believe it was all around that organization that mishandled the situation. And
because even when you so much as suspect, even if it's not necessarily on you, that something's wrong, you absolutely have to speak up and say something.
Yeah, you gotta raise the white flag immediately. And what I mean. The thing is, what's to come of it if in the event, I don't know if you saw Yankees lost 2-1?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. I was going to make mention, but I didn't want to interrupt you as you were flying on a good point.
No, well, anyway, but you know, it's just I'm trying not to get emotional about the situation because watching Tua laying on the ground yesterday was one of the hardest things I've seen. You know, watching Michael Irvin at the link laying on the ground rough. In 1998, that was very rough for me. It was rough for me, and that was the day that I hated Eagles fans with a passion.
Yeah, it was very classless what they did. I think if you fast forward to the Victor Cruz injury, I think you had a better caliber of Eagle fans in the building. I mean, of course, you're going to have those a-holes that are going to be a-holes no matter what. But I do believe that for the most part, when the Cruz career-altering injury went down, the Eagles fans were a little more classy. For one thing,
yeah. Players were. Yeah, and I think that also has a lot to do with.
You've seen it as recent as Shepard and the Cowboys. Many Cowboys came over to check on him.
Yeah, and I think that also has to do with the rivalry itself. You know, when you think of the Cowboys and the Giants, well, yes, it's a rivalry. It's a lot different than the Cowboys and the Eagles or the Cowboys and the Commanders, should I say. So, I mean, I'm not going to excuse any of this. I'm upset with the Dolphins organization for the way they handled this whole Tua thing where his career could possibly be over. In my opinion, if I'm Tua's father, I am not allowing him to touch the NFL field ever again. I am going to do my best to talk him out of it. And then with the organization, if these allegations do in fact show true and prove what a lot of us think is the truth about Tua, what are they going to do? Dock him a first-round pick? What message is that sending?
I mean, professional sports has proven to us over the course of the last 10 to 15 years that a slap on the wrist is usually the most likely outcome. You saw it in Major League Baseball with A.J. Hinch. You saw it in the NFL with the Spygate scandal. We've seen it with Tim Donaghy. That was a lifetime ban. But did anything truly get rectified in terms of refereeing? We watched the NBA. I certainly don't believe so. I think they just got a guy that wasn't, keeping it close to the vest and taking care of that angle of it. So, you've seen this in 3 major sports over the last 15 to 20 years. What do you think?
I mean, it's pretty clear. Something needs to be done.
Yeah, something definitely needs to be done. It's unacceptable. And, like I said, there are 2 things. Natural grass and stop BSing people about your protocols. Because I'm sorry, the NFL failed miserably, the Miami Dolphins failed miserably, and this kid could have been killed. Unacceptable.
He could have. Very unacceptable. Moving on.
Short but sweet. Aaron Judge was not able to hammer down the American League / Yankees single season record of 62. He's going to have to wait another day. One hit, walked a couple of times with a strikeout. More importantly, the Orioles won. And it does seem that, unfortunately, it's kind of becoming an afterthought what the result of the game is. I mean, granted, the Orioles needed to win to stay alive with their diminishing playoff hopes. The Yankees are kind of in coast mode. They are guaranteed the 2 spot, more or less. It's just a matter of who they're going to play from the wild card survivors. But you brought to my attention that on the intentional walk to Judge, a lot of fans were scooting out. And I do understand that, actually, no, I don't understand. It's a Friday. That's not a work night for many people. This isn't Tuesday. This isn't Monday. Yeah, I actually forgot today was Friday because of all the hurricane stuff that's gone down. Today was like a very odd day, odd week, I guess you could say. It does not feel like a Friday for me personally. But, Judge has to wait another day. Orioles got a pretty good team. I do believe their manager is definitely a candidate for manager of the year, given their vast turnaround, even though they're likely not going to qualify for the playoffs. But kind of got the vibe that you do have a chance to see that historic home run when they go to Texas.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it is, if I'm a Yankees fan or if I'm the Yankees owner, general manager, whatever the case, I want this to get done and over with today.
It's
so that way
to a level.
Yeah, and so because there's 6 games left in this season, if he can come out and hit 62 tomorrow, you can rest him the rest of the season. And he needs that rest. You need to rest your starter. I see why the fans left, but I just don't like leaving, especially when there's still a chance to win the game. Yeah, they're not playing for the 1 seed or 3 seed.
There's got to be a happy medium because I have mixed feelings on that. Because he has played a ton of games this year, and he's carried a lot of weight for a lot of the year. But
I mean, he carried him in July and August.
My fear is I don't want to rest him too long and then he comes back cold either. I guess that it's kind of a catch, because this is my thing. With the way that the playoffs are set up, and even with the off days in between, Major League Baseball has made it very more manageable to not only deal with your pitching staff, but to give your stars rest. But I do expect that in that Texas series, especially if he's already hit number 62, there's a distinct possibility he might sit at least half of that series.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the series, it's 1 game on Monday, 2 games, a doubleheader on Tuesday, and then an afternoon game on Wednesday.
I expect his last game of the regular season on Tuesday.
Yeah, I do too.
Probably
and I think
the first game too.
The first game, yeah, that's the one I think as well. So, obviously we want to see it. The fans want to see it. Fans of baseball want to see him set the Major League Baseball home run single season record. Fans of the Giants or the Cardinals or the Cubs or even the Athletics will say, no, the records he still needs to beat Sosa. He still needs to beat McGuire. He still needs to beat Bonds. Because when you really think about it, it's just those fan bases that will sit there and argue that it's Barry Bonds has the record with 73 home runs in a year. And I mean, I stand very firm on it. I believe if and when he hits 62, that will be the Major League Baseball home run record. And I know there are plenty of fans that think the same way we do.
You know what cracks me up, though? Major League Baseball has the ability to alter the record if they chose to, because we spoke about this on many a show. Roger Maris was not considered the home run leader for a single season until after his death, because it took him until game 163. And let's be honest, part of the reason also is because Babe Ruth was an icon and Major League Baseball didn't feel all that comfortable. So they were looking for an angle to keep Ruth looking better. But yet, after the Congress thing and after we know what we know, they still haven't altered those records. But they were punishing Roger Maris for playing an extra game and not being as famous or as beloved as Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth. It's a trip. It's a trip with what they worry about, what they don't worry about. And I understand why some of the Maris kids kind of got that little salty, abrasive attitude. it was a cool moment to see Roger Maris's son and Aaron Judge's mother have that embrace. A lot of people on social media didn't realize. They were like, "Oh man, how was Aaron Judge so tall?" A
Oh,
lot
they
of
didn't
people
know he was
weren't aware.
adopted.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't aware of that. But regardless, adopted, not. I have stepbrothers, stepsister, don't matter. Family is family. It was awesome to see that. It was nice to put that to bed and acknowledge that they're both on the same team, so to speak. But I guess what I'm saying is, while I wasn't the biggest fan of how the Marises handled some of the questions, I will say that I understand their anger, because your father didn't get the due respect when he was alive. Then when his record got broken, it was broken by multiple cheaters. And now it's almost like they're playing with your emotions to a level. And I'll be honest, if it was my dad, I don't know if I would be so excited about someone breaking that record, considering how much their father went through. He was losing hair. He was being treated awful by Yankee fans and just baseball fans alike because of people's love for Babe Ruth and, at the time, love for Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was an icon. So, there's a couple of ways to look at it, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm happy that it seems like there's a mutual respect between Judge, the Maris family, and relatives alike, and it's nice to see, because I do think it's important for Roger Maris to continue to be remembered, whether this thing gets broken or not. I do think it's kind of cool that the three most prolific single-season home run hitters in American League history are all Yankees. That's kind of cool too.
And to follow up on what you were saying with Judge and his mother and the way he was raised, earlier today after my son's baseball game, I was talking to him. He was my son's first baseball coach, Coach Joey Galvan. And one thing, while I did know about Aaron Judge being adopted, he gave me a quote that Aaron Judge had said, and it got me. So I'm going to repeat it. And he said, "I have one set of parents, the ones that raised me. That's how it is. Some kids grow in their mom's stomach. I grew in my mom's heart." And when he said that to me right now, I was like, "Oh my God, like that is such a great kid
No,
right
it's
there."
awesome, dude. It really is awesome. And like I said, I have step parents. I value them in the same regard as my biological parents. They all played a part in my development growing up. So, and they all got along to a pretty decent level, which I think was setting a good precedent on the way adults are supposed to behave. So I will give them all credit for that. I want to head over to what's going on here. This is probably the most important series going on around the board in Major League Baseball, with so many other divisions and things of that nature being decided.
This is the most important series this weekend.
I mean, the Braves look like they're going to steal round one of this 3-game set and give themselves a 1-game lead. And, there's a lot of peaks and valleys in the season. I mean, we saw how horrible the Yankees were in August and how it really looked like panic time for a while there. And it was quite depressing, actually. It seems like the Yankees, while still having some similar problems to August, they have kind of righted the ship to a point where you're like, you know what? They called up some kids. Kid like Cabrera might make the postseason roster, similar to Jeter in '95. And it kind of gives the vibe that even though they didn't finish as good in the second half as they should have, they are probably going to be able to challenge the Astros. And I do think that there is more confidence amongst Yankee fans right now than there was, say, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, whatever have you. Reason I bring that up, the Mets really shot themselves in the foot when you think about some of the series that they lost to, the caliber of teams they've lost to. You're talking about getting beat by the Washington Nationals, the Miami Marlins, a few days after Don Mattingly basically tells them he's going to move on. There's rumors that he might go commentary with the Yankees, maybe just kind of hang around the organization to see if Aaron Boone hangs it up a little earlier than expected. I don't necessarily think Boone will get fired, But I do think that with his health issues, there's a possibility that if he wins the World Series, he might walk away sooner than later. But I guess where I'm going is DeGrom got lit up 2 consecutive starts now.
You took it out of my mouth.
Yeah, and that is very worrisome if I'm a Mets fan, because this was like the guarantee that, oh, we might be struggling on offense from time to time. We're going to have our share of issues, but we got that 1-2 that the Yankees don't have, and nobody has that 1-2. But, I question if Jake is all the way back when I see that. And I wouldn't say all the way back. It's just, baseball is such a fickle game on how close winning and losing is. But, you're talking about the defending world champions who are about to take a game lead with only a few left in the season. And I don't know if the Mets lose this division. I don't know if they can psychologically recover in the playoffs. I'm not sure.
So they're not they actually just tied for the division lead tonight between the Mets and the Braves. And now as far as who has the tiebreaker and all that, I would have to check.
They haven't played an even amount of games. Are they dead even on percentage?
They're dead even on percentage. Both at 624.
I got you. I clearly I was only paying attention to one side of it, which was probably the loss column. So I see where you're going. But Lennox field.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point that I was going to bring up about Jacob deGrom. The guy had the opportunity when he came back from his injury against the Yankees in the part 2 of the Subway Series. It was Jacob deGrom, and it was Max Scherzer. And it was like, man, it looks like the Mets are going to win the other 2 games. And they got lit up by the Yankees. And then Jacob deGrom's last start, once again, was not a great one. And then his start tonight, once again, he got lit up. We have Max Scherzer pitching tomorrow night against Kyle Wright. How's he going to look? This is an Atlanta team that I said it last year, going back to as the end of the season. I said, if this Braves team gets in, watch out. They were my World Series pick at the end of the season. I said, you cannot discredit anything they have done. They have done it with a lot of players missing. And they went on. They shocked the world when they beat the Dodgers, and then they went on and won the World Series. And the reason why this series is more important, and I think it's a lot easier for the Braves, there's a lot more on the back of the Mets. They're supposed to win this series based on the sure fact that they have Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer. Just because of that right there, they're supposed to win.
That would be what thinking. Yeah.
And they didn't, to get rocked. And now if it was a 2-1 game, came down to the 9th inning on a walk-off, then okay, I'd understand. But deGrom, like you said, he got rocked. The Braves, the importance of this series to, one, avoid having to play the Dodgers until the NLCS. That's huge. And then who you're going to open up against in the playoffs, playing the number 7 seed, which is probably, if I'm correct, it's the Brewers or the Phillies. So, it's like there's a lot more, and we're getting.
I will say this: if the Mets run into like the Phillies or something, that is far from a guarantee, just given the history of those 2 teams.
Exactly, and
that would be devastating for Met fans. And the thing is, it's more devastating if you lose a 3-game set, because it's not like you just had the one playoff game, like where the Giants and the Dodgers played one game, 2 100-win teams last year, where I'm sure most baseball fans looked at it as, well, this ain't right. Somebody's going to get knocked out, and they might be the 2 best teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But I'm happy that Major League Baseball is trying to rectify some of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess we're going to see how this all plays out, man. I love this time of year, where it's the end of the season. I'm sitting over here wanting Aaron Judge not to hit a home run this weekend, so that way I have the opportunity to go see it possibly in Arlington. And then we're keeping a close eye on the Mets-Braves series. Who's going to get that number 2 seed? Who's going to avoid the Dodgers? And more importantly, who's also has a better chance of avoiding the Cardinals in the second round? So there's there's a lot at stake here. And me personally, I just think there's more pressure on the Mets than there is on the Braves. And that's that. People are expecting the Mets to do this.
I see the Braves as playing with house money. They lost Freddie Freeman in the offseason. And if you look at where they were 2 months ago, nobody so much as even had them making the wild card, let alone having a chance to completely catch the Mets. At different junctures of the season, Idris said that he felt that the Braves could catch them. And at different junctures of the season, Idris also apologized to Met fans, saying, okay. I don't know how this story is going to end. And I also don't know if losing the division is a death sentence for the Mets because they still have that pitching. But past that pitching, player for player, I do believe that the Braves, player for player, have a better team. Do they have a better manager? I'm not 100% sure. Do they have a better closer? No, I don't believe that to be true. I think Diaz is the best closer in Major League Baseball right now.
Oh, absolutely.
But, the
goal is to avoid him.
But that's what makes the way that these playoffs could go down towards right now really exciting. Just want to bring to the viewers' attention, if you haven't yet, check out our Week 4 NFL preview. It was our previous show. Normally, we would do this. Oh, I just got Jacob's DeGrom status changed from healthy to day-to-day. That just came over my Yahoo feed. I'm in the fantasy championship in Mr. Olson's league for baseball. But at any rate, our Week 4 NFL show was done earlier because of the hurricane. I wasn't sure if I wasn't going to have power, if I wasn't going to be able to do a show. So definitely give that a look and expect moving forward that we'll be getting those football shows out more closer to game day. I will say this, Jacksonville, Philly, definitely one to look for. I think that's going to, under the radar, be one of the best games. And I think this is a key week where a lot of teams that are going to be somebody separate themselves from teams that are going to be pretending. I think Week 4, Week 5, the next couple of weeks are where a lot of that starts to come into motion.
Yeah, and you brought up Jacksonville and Philly. Since we did our episode early in the week because due to unforeseen circumstances, you had Hurricane Ian where you didn't know what it was going to bring to your area. Thankfully, it wasn't much. Can't say the same for Fort Myers, but that's the one thing about doing the shows earlier in the week is there's a lot of things that happen throughout the week. We can talk about the Saints. Now we know Jameis Winston is not playing this weekend. It's Andy Dalton. So I've actually changed my pick, and I'm actually rolling with the Jaguars to come up with the upset this weekend. Just something about the way they are playing right now that
if the game wasn't in Philly, I would agree, but I still think that they're gonna be within a one-score game, and more importantly than if they win. And I said this on the previous show, I'm curious to see if they can bring to the attention of other NFL teams something that can be exploited in Philly to beat them. Because right now, Philly looks like the best team in the NFL. I still believe that it is Buffalo, despite Buffalo having a loss already. I think Miami, while having a good record early on, is a bit of an enigma. I still think they should have a losing record based on the comeback in Baltimore, based on kind of getting lucky against the Bills. And I'll be honest, the Bengals are gritty. They could easily be 3-1 or even 4-0.
4-0, yeah.
2 final plays, and I'll be the first to admit that I'm not even that high on the way the Bengals have played, but it just goes to show you that there is so much parity in the NFL right now. And, the difference between being a 7-win team or being an 11-win team is sometimes 3 to 4 plays.
Yeah, and look at the Bengals. It was their long snapper. He got hurt against the Steelers, and they couldn't make field goals because the snaps were not getting there quick. Then you look at the Colts. They literally needed Harrison Butker to be out of that game in order for them to win. If not, the Chiefs are undefeated. So there's a lot of things, like you said, inches, couple plays, and that's the difference in an NFL game, not like college football, where if you're the good team, you're going to blow them out by 35 or more.
I want to ask you this. I'm going to give you my lock of the week, and I want to see if you throw one at me. My absolute lock of the week is Green Bay against the New England Patriots. Do you have another game that you see as a potential lock?
Um, Even with the injuries to DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I still believe the Lions offense is playing great. I believe the defense is playing great, and I believe that they will handle Seattle fairly easy. I think they will win by anywhere from 3 to 6 points. I think it'll be a one-score game, but that's my lock. They will come out victorious on top, especially since it is at home. If you really look at it, this team should be 2-1 right now, not 1-2. But due to going for a field goal at the end of the game last week against the Vikings, that's a lesson for Coach Dan Campbell. That's my lock of the week. The Lions will defeat the Seahawks.
While I hope I'm wrong, and while I did pick the Giants, I will admit that a potential upset of the week could be the Chicago Bears sneaking one out in MetLife, given the Giants' very short week. Having said that, I do think the Giants are going to take care of business and win the game. We'll see. But that is my potential upset of the week. And I guess the other one, hard to ignore, Jacksonville, Philly, but I do believe Philly's going to win that ball game. To be honest, I think the Cowboys, Eagles, and Giants are all going to win this week. I think the only NFC East team that will lose is the Commanders because they're playing your team.
Yeah, and I've got to go. I mean, like I said, I think the Jaguars can pull it off. That's my pick. My upset, though, is going to be the Texans over the Chargers. Too many question marks right now. We now know Keenan Allen is not playing this week. Joey Bosa is on IR. We know J.C. Jackson's probably not going to play this week. Justin Herbert has still got his issues with his ribs. There's too many question marks right now for the Chargers where we're starting to see this is probably going to be the team of this season that's going to suffer countless injuries. And every year we have that good team that suffers it. And it looks like right now, early on, it's the Chargers. And Texans, they've been playing some very motivated football. While they haven't won a game, they've been in every game so far this year. They did tie a game week 1 against the Colts. I believe that could be the upset of the week right there is the Texans pulling one off against the Chargers at home at Reliance Stadium.
I still think the Chargers will find a way, but to your point, it certainly looks like they are in some big trouble with the injury bug. Before we get out of here, on a lighter, more comical note, I did want to make a mention of this. Eli Manning on his Manningcast made mention of how the Broncos should have given Russell Wilson's contract to the punter.
To the punter.
Russell Wilson, I got
Russell's response
in a playful way, reacted to Eli and was like, I'm undefeated for my career against Chad Powers.
Yeah.
And what I like about that is that you can tell that there's really no ill will between the two. They're just having a little fun with each other. And I think sometimes it's good to see that. It's not always a great thing to take yourself all that serious. And I think one thing about Russ and Eli is that they've done a good job of that. But I'll be the first to say I love Eli Manning. I'm a diehard Giant fan. But I, for one, didn't really like that he went in on Russ like that because even though Russ is playing like crap right now, he's a tough guy not to like.
Yeah, but I think it's been a lot easier to dog on Russ this year after we had the video of Let's Ride and all these other things that are coming out on him, while I'm not going to say his head is not in the game anymore because I absolutely do believe it is, it just does not seem like it's in it the way it once was. And plus, it was a lot easier to succeed with that team when you had the Legion of Boom in that defense.
And to be fair, I will say this. While Russ is still figuring out with his new teammates, I do believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is catching a break, and the 49ers in general are catching a break because of Denver's struggles. Now, go figure that. Denver actually won the game because Garoppolo pulled a Dan Orlovsky running out of bounds or walking backwards out of bounds. This is the interesting thing with Denver, though. Kansas City showed a couple of warts losing to a previously winless Colts team. You already alluded to all the Chargers injuries. The Raiders don't have a win yet. The Raiders will get a win this week, in my opinion, against those Broncos. But the point I'm making is the Denver Broncos, first month through the year, while their offense looks very anemic and very lost, right now they have just as good a chance as anyone in that division to come away with it. And this kind of supports my point about the undeniable parity in the NFL. It is on full display.
And one of the other things we have to keep in consideration, I believe this is going to be the weekend where we're going to start seeing some better football. Through the first 3 weeks of the season, the amount of touchdowns scored has been a lot lower than normal. I credit that to the fact that we're not seeing starters play in the preseason anymore. So really the first 3 weeks of the season are the preseason. So we're going to start seeing the good teams separate themselves from the bad teams. The mediocre to good, they're going to be in there till about week 12, week 13. But the great teams are really going to separate themselves. We're going to find out, are the Chiefs as good as they were the first couple of weeks, and especially week 3 after suffering a heartbreaking loss? We saw the meltdown between Mahomes and Bieniemy at the end of the first half. We saw how the Bills lost that game against the Dolphins, with a bobbled snap at the end of the first half, which made Josh Allen throw the ball to Stephon Diggs, and the clock ended up running out. And then the same situation at the end of the second half, which resulted in Ken Dorsey being the laughing stock for the week because of how he resulted in the press box throwing his playbook and everything everywhere.
Josh Allen said, though. Josh Allen said, "I don't want to be involved with anybody who wants to lose." So he's defending his
absolutely
good stuff. Good job, Josh Allen. It's going to be a very interesting week in the NFL, and I do believe that to be true, that you're going to start seeing a lot more efficiency with the offenses, because with the preseason, you do tend to see more guys sitting. And I also think, in addition to the field issues that we've already spoken on earlier in the show, I also believe that the lack of reps also leads to a lot of early season injuries, because it certainly seems that I've never done the percentages of this, but it does appear to be that you get the most injuries in September/early October. I could be wrong. I would like to look up that stat, but I do tend to believe that it seems to be that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't have the actual stat, but I know going back to last year, that was something I was keeping track of, or even during 2020's COVID season, that there was a lot of injuries because there was no preseason football in 2020. And then there was a lot of injuries last year because a lot of teams had said, well, hey, we didn't play preseason last year, so why play our starters for preseason this year? Let's just see what we need to bring. Let's face it, in the NFL, most teams already know which 40 guys are going to make the team. It's a battle for the rest of it,
Yeah, for sure.
And I will add this other thing. I believe that after this weekend, we will have our first firing of a head coach in Matt Rule of the Carolina Panthers. With the news about him losing the locker room, we see how DJ Moore responded to what Matt Rule said about the receivers. There's just too much. They have Arizona coming into town. I believe this is going to be it. I believe Arizona might actually win this game a lot more handily.
I believe so. Thought. I think their defense played a lot better against the Rams, even though they lost. And I think it's a get-right week for James Conner.
It is. And if you've lost the locker room, players are not going to play for you. You're going to get fired. That's simple. You cannot ever lose the locker room, because once you lost the locker room, you've lost the season. So I think I really do believe that this upcoming week we will have our first NFL firing of the season in Matt Rule.
I tend to agree with you. And last thing I'm going to say, going into the season, I was very critical of how your coach, I thought Mike McCarthy, Dallas is not the type to move on from a coach during the season. It's very rare that happens. Same with my team.
It's only happened once. Yeah, it's only happened once under the Jerry Jones era.
But the point I was making is, with the inspired ball that you guys have been playing, and I'll be honest, Cooper Rush, even to a level, I think is saving his ass to a level. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This might be a bit of a reach. But if the Dallas Cowboys keep winning with Cooper Rush, I do question if there is not a quarterback controversy to come soon.
Yeah, and I think it's building, but I also think a lot of that has to do with the fact that if you look at the way Kellen Moore has been calling the games the last 2 weeks compared to when Dak's in the lineup, it's drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Rush in there, it's the way we want him, running the ball, and it's been working. We're averaging close to 200 yards a game rushing the ball right now with Cooper Rush in there. We're not forcing him to throw the ball 45 to 65 times a game.
I've said this to fans in the past. The Eagles don't win the Super Bowl against New England if Carson Wentz plays. You back it up many years
Oh,
before
absolutely.
that. The New York Giants don't win the Super Bowl if Phil Simms plays. And this is not knocking on two very excellent quarterbacks during those seasons. It's just that sometimes less is more. And I do believe that with less film, with less stuff to study on, a lot of backup quarterbacks when, truly being the driving force of the coaching staff. Because, being a backup quarterback, there's so much more to the job than people see. And I already alluded to how if Bridgewater plays and if the Dolphins are responsible with Tua, Dolphins are probably still undefeated. But, in time, like anything else, some stuff will show on Cooper Rush. But because of the fact that I'm not convinced that Dallas is quote unquote in love with Dak, I do tend to think that this is something that could be something. I'm not sure, but it will be interesting to see how it unfolds. And, back to my point on McCarthy, I think that because of the fact that the defense has been playing at such an elite level and that, the cure of all things is winning, I don't know. Going in, I was like, there's no way this guy survives this year or past this year. Right now, I'm not sure. But ultimately, the answer is, and I
Yeah,
had this conversation with Elliot in the past, the Dallas Cowboys have to at least make the title game, get past round two for Mike McCarthy to be safe. And I still think that's the truth.
yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest. The reason why Dallas is in this position we're in right now, while I was one of the fans that was saying like this is going to be a long season, but this injury was actually a blessing in disguise. But the biggest thing for Dallas was bringing back Dan Quinn. Let's face it. I mean, the way he has this defense playing right now, the formula to win in the NFL is defense running the ball. We've seen it time and time again. Passing the ball puts fans in the seats, but old-fashioned football always wins championships. Always. And, Dallas, I fully expect them to come out on top by a pretty good margin this weekend. The real test, the first true test for Cooper Rush is going to be next week when they travel to LA. If Dallas comes out of that game with a 20-17 win by running the ball, playing great defense, then there's definitely a controversy at hand. And I mean, that's leading up to the Eagles game too. So, it's one of those we saw with Dak in 2016 when he came in unexpectedly due to an injury to Romo and Kellen Moore and so on and so forth. We saw what happened. Now it's almost a similar type of way. Here we are. Cooper Rush is building up a strong resume. The play calling has been great. The discipline is the one thing I don't like, but it's been getting better. All the penalties we see, but there's just everything seems to be falling in place right now. And then which made me think about this one thing. Dallas's old line has actually been playing surprisingly very good. And at the end of the season, they might be one of the best O-lines because at that point, we're also going to have Tyron Smith back. So you're talking about Tyler Smith, the rookie left tackle who's playing great. You have Jason Peters. You have Tyron Smith. You have the future Hall of Famer in Zach Martin. That's four, well, at least three premier future Hall of Famers. Tyler Smith, we'll find out in time. And then Tyler Biadasz, who's a great run blocking center. His pass blocking has got improved. I mean, there's just a lot. But as far as Mike McCarthy, I believe a lot of this has to do with the fact that Kellen Moore is calling games the correct way, and Dan Quinn has that defense playing some inspired football. And not to mention Donovan Wilson, a sixth-round pick in 2019, who is now rated the second best safety in the NFL right now.
And like anything else, time will tell. Because I still try to
Absolutely.
keep it at some kind of happy medium of perspective. I don't take anything away from anybody. Winning is winning. I know how much of a work in progress the Giants offense could be. Tampa was banged up, similar to Dallas being banged up. And the Bengals had their first true offensive performance this past week, in my opinion. But that's why September sometimes gives us excitement and confusion, and October usually kind of brings more of a happy medium to a realism. Right now, it's really, we can analyze this all we want, but only time will truly tell. Until next time, I'm Richie. He's Zappy. I hope I didn't give my viewers vertigo. I'm still getting used to doing some laptop shopping, and I've been using the phone, so it's a little different of an experience. But I had a good time doing the show as always. Zappy, great job as always. We are out.